there's a compound called avenantramides, found exclusively in oats, that reduces inflammatory markers by up to 47%, according to research published in the Journal of Nutrition in 2022. These unique polyphenols change how your immune system responds to stress, turning down the volume on chronic inflammation that accelerates every disease of aging. Yet here's what nobody tells you: 87% of people destroy these compounds completely through common preparation mistakes, turning one of nature's most powerful foods into little more than sugary mush that spikes your blood sugar worse than white bread. The global oatmeal market is worth $3.8 billion, built largely on convenience products that strip away the very benefits that made oats valuable in the first place. Food scientists know this. They've published over 200 studies in the last decade, showing how processing, preparation, temperature, and timing dramatically alter oats' biological effects. But you won't see this information on your instant oatmeal packet, because it would complicate their 5-minute marketing message. Let me tell you about Robert, a 62-year-old engineer from Michigan. His LDL cholesterol sat at 168 despite taking statins for 3 years. His doctor wanted to increase the dose. Instead, Robert started eating oats, but he did it right. He avoided every mistake I'm about to show you. 6 weeks later, his LDL dropped to 132 without changing his medication. His doctor couldn't explain it. The cardiologist actually asked what Robert had changed. When he said just oatmeal, the doctor looked skeptical. But the blood work doesn't lie. Today I'm walking you through the 10 most common oatmeal mistakes, ranked from least to most damaging. By the time we hit number 1, you'll understand why your morning bowl might be working against you instead of for you. Some of these will surprise you. Some will make you angry that nobody mentioned them before. But all of them are backed by peer-reviewed research that's been sitting in medical databases, while we keep making the same errors every single morning. Let's start with number 10. Mistake 10. Using instant oats. Walk into any grocery store, and you'll see them. Those convenient little packets promising a healthy breakfast in 90 seconds. Here's what happens during instant oat processing. Manufacturers take whole oat groats, steam them at high temperatures, roll them paper thin, then toast them to remove moisture. This pre-cooking process destroys about 23% of the resistant starch content, according to data from Diabetes Care, published in 2019. Why does resistant starch matter? Your body can't digest it in your small intestine. It travels intact to your colon, where gut bacteria ferment it into butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that regulates insulin sensitivity and reduces inflammation. When you destroy resistant starch through processing, you're left with rapidly digestible starch that hits your bloodstream like a glucose bomb. The glycemic index tells the story. Steel-cut oats have a GI of about 55, moderate and manageable. Instant oats, they clock in at 83, nearly identical to white bread at 85. Your insulin response changes dramatically. With steel-cut oats, your blood sugar rises gradually over 45 minutes, peaks gently, then descends slowly. With instant oats, you get a spike within 15 minutes, a sharp peak, then a crash that leaves you hungry and irritable 2 hours later. But here's what really concerns me. That insulin spike doesn't just affect your energy, it triggers a cascade of hormonal responses. Your pancreas floods your system with insulin, your liver switches into fat storage mode, your appetite hormones leptin and ghrelin shift in ways that increase cravings for more carbohydrates. You're essentially programming your body to want another blood sugar spike in a few hours. The solution isn't complicated. Buy steel-cut oats or even regular rolled oats instead of instant. Yes, they take longer to cook, about 20 minutes for steel-cut versus 90 seconds for instant. But you can prep a week's worth on Sunday evening, portion it out, and just reheat each morning. You'll preserve that resistant starch, keep your blood sugar stable, and actually feel full until lunch. Mistake 9. Adding sugar first. Most people sweeten their oats while they're cooking. Makes sense, right? The sugar dissolves better in hot liquid. Except this creates a chemical reaction that nobody warned you about. When sugar combines with protein at high temperatures, anything above 248 degrees Fahrenheit, you form compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGs. These aren't just some abstract chemical concern. AGs are the same compounds that accumulate in diabetics and accelerate aging in everyone. They bind to proteins in your blood vessels, making them stiff and dysfunctional. They attach to collagen in your skin, breaking down elasticity. They interfere with cellular signaling throughout your body. A study in BMC Medicine from 2020 measured oxidative stress markers in adults who consumed high-age diets versus low-age diets versus low-age diet. The high-age group showed 34% higher levels of C-reactive protein, a key inflammation marker linked to heart disease. Here's the mechanism. Sugar molecules, especially fructose, bond with amino acids in a process called the Maillard reaction. You've seen this reaction before. It's what makes bread turn brown when you toast it, or meat caramelize when you sear it. In small amounts from occasional foods, your body can handle it. But when you're creating HEEs every single morning in your oatmeal pot, you're accumulating these compounds day after day. Your kidneys have to filter out HEEs. Your liver has to process them. Your immune system has to deal with the inflammatory response they trigger. Over time, this becomes a burden your body struggles to manage, especially as you age and these systems naturally become less efficient. The fix is simple, but it requires changing your habit. Cook your oats completely first. Let them cool for at least 5 minutes. Then add your sweetener. If you want sweetener without the AG formation risk, try adding frozen berries during the last minute of cooking. The fruit's fructose is bound up with fiber, which slows absorption, and you get all those anthocyanins and polyphenols that actually fight inflammation. Or use a small amount of maple syrup or honey after cooking. You'll need less because you'll taste it more directly, rather than having it blend into the cooking process. Mistake 8. Skipping the soak. Let me tell you about Margaret, a 68-year-old retired teacher who started eating oats every morning for bone health. She'd read that oats contain minerals important for bone density. After 6 months, her DEXA scan showed minimal improvement. Her doctor was puzzled. Margaret was doing everything right, or so it seemed. Turns out she was making mistake number 8. Oats contain something called phytic acid, an anti-nutrient that binds to minerals like zinc, iron, magnesium, and calcium in your digestive tract. Think of phytic acid as a molecular cage that locks up these minerals so your body can absorb them. Research shows phytic acid can reduce mineral absorption by 60 to 70%. You might be eating oats rich in these nutrients, but you're absorbing only a fraction of what's available. Plants produce phytic acid as a storage form of phosphorus. It's their way of protecting seeds until conditions are right for germination. When seeds soak in water, an enzyme called phytase activates and begins breaking down phytic acid. This same process happens in your kitchen if you soak your oats overnight. Here's the chemistry. Phytase works best in slightly acidic conditions with some warmth and time. When you soak oats in water with a tablespoon of lemon juice or apple cider vinegar, you create the perfect environment for phytase to work. The pH drops just enough to activate the enzyme. Over 8 to 12 hours, phytase systematically dismantles those phytic acid molecules, freeing up the minerals they were holding hostage. The research backs this up. Studies measuring mineral bioavailability show that soaked oats release significantly more zinc and iron during digestion compared to unsoaked oats. In practical terms, this means your body actually receives the magnesium it needs for muscle function, the zinc for immune support, the iron for oxygen transport. After I explained this to Margaret, she started soaking her steel-cut oats overnight in water with a splash of lemon juice. She'd drain them in the morning, then cook as usual. Her next DEXA scan 6 months later showed the improvement her doctor expected. Her bone density had increased measurably. Something as simple as soaking made the difference between wasting those nutrients and actually absorbing them. To do this right, measure your oats into a bowl before bed. Cover with water about 2 inches above the oat. Add 1 tablespoon of something acidic lemon juice, apple cider vinegar, or even yogurt. Cover and leave on your counter overnight. In the morning, drain and rinse them. Now cook as you normally would, but reduce the cooking time by about a third, since they're already partially hydrated. Mistake 7. Wrong liquid ratio. You might think the amount of water you use is just about texture preference. Some people like thick oatmeal, others prefer it thinner. But the liquid ratio directly affects how well oats deliver their most researched benefit: cholesterol reduction. Oats contain a type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. This compound has a unique molecular structure that allows it to form a thick gel when it absorbs water. That gel is what binds to cholesterol in your digestive tract and carries it out of your body before you can absorb it. But beta-glucan only forms that effective gel when it has enough water to work with and the right cooking conditions to fully hydrate. The standard advice on most packages is a 1:2 ratio, 1 part oats to 2 parts liquid. This works fine if all you care about is edible oatmeal. But research from the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry shows that beta-glucan doesn't reach its maximum viscosity and cholesterol binding capacity unless you use at least a 1:30 or 1:4 ratio, depending on whether you're using steel-cut or rolled oats. Here's what happens at the molecular level. Each beta-glucan molecule can bind a specific amount of water. When there's insufficient water, the molecules can't fully expand and interlock into that gel network. You end up with partially hydrated beta-glucan that passes through your system without forming the structure needed to trap cholesterol effectively. Studies comparing cholesterol reduction in adults eating oats prepared with different liquid ratios showed striking differences. Those using the minimal 1:2 ratio saw LDL cholesterol drop by about 12% over 8 weeks. Those using a 1:4 ratio, more liquid, longer cooking time, better hydration saw LDL drop by 23%. Same oats, same amount, nearly double the benefit just by adding more water and cooking properly. There's a satiety connection too. When beta-glucan forms that viscous gel in your stomach, it slows gastric emptying. You feel full longer. But if the gel never properly forms because you didn't use enough liquid, you lose that appetite-suppressing effect. You'll be hungry sooner, more likely to snack before lunch, and over time that affects your calorie intake and weight management. For steel-cut oats, use a 1:4 ratio, 1 cup of oat to 4 cups of liquid. Cook for 20 to 25 minutes, stirring occasionally. For rolled oats, a 1:30 ratio works, 1 cup of oats to 3 cups of liquid, cooked for 10 to 15 minutes. Yes, you'll have more liquid to evaporate, and yes, it takes longer. But you're not just making breakfast, you're creating a functional food that actually does what oats are supposed to do. Mistake 6, microwaving in plastic. This one flies under the radar because it seems so convenient. Throw your oats in a plastic container, add water, microwave for 3 minutes, done. Quick, easy, minimal cleanup, except you're potentially exposing yourself to endocrine-disrupting compounds that interfere with your hormones in ways that can take years to manifest. Plastic containers, even those marketed as microwave-safe, contain chemicals called phthalates and bisphenols that help make the plastic flexible and durable. At room temperature, these chemicals stay mostly locked in the plastic structure. But when you heat plastic, especially in a microwave where temperatures can spike rapidly and unevenly, these compounds migrate into your food. Research published in Environmental Health Perspectives in 2021 analyzed phthalate levels in foods before and after microwave heating in plastic containers. The results were concerning. Foods heated in plastic containers. The results were concerning. Foods heated in plastic showed phthalate levels 15 to 25 times higher than the same foods heated in glass. These aren't trace amounts we're talking about. These are concentrations high enough to have measurable biological effects. Phthalates are what scientists call xenoestrogens, foreign compounds that mimic estrogen in your body. They bind to estrogen receptors and trigger responses your body didn't intend. In men, this disrupts testosterone production. One study tracking males who regularly consumed foods heated in plastic showed an 18% reduction in free testosterone over 12 months, compared to men who used glass or ceramic containers. In women, phthalates interfere with reproductive hormones and have been linked to early puberty in girls and fertility issues in adults. But the hormonal effects go beyond reproduction. These compounds affect thyroid function, insulin sensitivity, and even brain chemistry. Your endocrine system is incredibly sensitive to small disruptions, and chronic exposure to phthalates, hormone-mimicking chemicals, can throw multiple systems out of balance. The solution couldn't be simpler. Buy glass or ceramic containers for microwave use. They cost a bit more up front, but they last indefinitely and don't leach anything into your food. If you already have plastic containers, repurpose them for cold storage only. Heat your oatmeal in glass, let it cool, then transfer it to plastic for the fridge if you meal prepping. And if you're thinking, but my plastic container says BPA-free, that's not necessarily safer. Manufacturers often replace BPA with alternatives like BPS or BPS that have similar molecular structures and potentially similar effects. The research on these replacements is still emerging, but early studies suggest they're not the safe alternatives the industry claims. Glass simply eliminates the concern entirely. The next 5 are worse. So we've covered mistakes 10 through 6. You're probably thinking some of these are surprising, maybe even a bit concerning if you've been making them for years. But here's what you need to understand. Those first 5 mistakes, while significant, are actually the minor ones on this list. The top 5 mistakes we're about to cover in part 2 don't just reduce oats' benefits, they can actively work against your health in ways most people never consider. We're talking about preparation methods that trigger inflammatory responses, timing mistakes that disrupt your metabolic rhythms, and quality issues that expose you to compounds you definitely don't want in your body. Mistake number 1 alone, the quality issue, affects an estimated 70% conventional oats sold in the United States based on independent laboratory testing. And the compounding effects when you make multiple mistakes simultaneously? That's when you're not just eating neutral food. You're consuming something that's actively making you less healthy. If you're watching this, type oatmeal in the comments so I know you're ready for part 2. I'm going to show you exactly how these next 5 mistakes compound each other, and more importantly, I'll walk you through the complete protocol that fixes all 10 issues at once. It's not complicated, but it is specific, and the results people get when they implement this properly are remarkable. Mistake 5. Eating it hot. This might be the most counterintuitive mistake on this entire list. You cook oatmeal? It's hot. You eat it immediately. That's what everyone does. But in doing so, you're missing out on one of oats' most powerful metabolic benefits, and it all comes down to something called resistant starch transformation. Here's the science. When you cook oats, heat breaks down the starch granules into a form your body can easily digest. That's type 1 resistant starch turning into digestible starch. But something fascinating happens when you let those cooked oats cool down. The starch molecules begin rearranging themselves into a new crystalline structure called type 3 resistant starch, also known as retrograded starch. This new form resists digestion in your small intestine. Why does this matter? Because resistant starch feeds specific bacteria in your colon that produce butyrate, a short-chain fatty acid that's essentially fuel for your intestinal cells. Research published in Nutrients in 2023 followed adults who consumed cooled and reheated starches versus freshly cooked starches. The cooled starch group showed a 31% increase in butyrate production measured through stool samples. Their insulin sensitivity improved by 18% over 6 weeks without any other dietary changes. The transformation takes time and temperature. When cooked oats cool to around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, basically refrigerator temperature, the starch molecules have migrated and reformed into these resistant structures. This process happens over 20 to 30 minutes at room temperature or more. Completely, if you refrigerate overnight, the cooler the temperature, the more resistant starch forms. Now here's where people get confused. Can you reheat it? Yes, but gently. If you blast it in the microwave until it's steaming hot again, you'll break down some of that newly formed resistant starch. Better to eat it cold like overnight oats, or warm it, just enough to take the chill off, maybe 30 seconds in the microwave or a quick stir in a warm pan. You want it lukewarm, not hot. I know this challenges the entire concept of a hot breakfast, but the metabolic benefits are real. The increased butyrate production improves your gut barrier function, reduces systemic inflammation, and helps regulate blood sugars throughout the day, not just after the meal itself. People who switch to overnight oats or cooled oatmeal report feeling satisfied longer, having more stable energy, and interestingly, experiencing fewer digestive issues. Try this. Cook a batch of oats using the proper liquid ratio we discussed. Let them cool completely, then refrigerate in glass containers. In the morning, add your toppings. We'll talk about which ones in a minute and eat them cold or barely warm. Your gut bacteria will thank you in ways you'll actually feel. Mistake 4. Missing the fat. Oats contain powerful antioxidant compounds, particularly those avenanthramides I mentioned earlier, plus significant amounts of vitamin E. But here's the problem. These are fat-soluble nutrients. Without dietary fat present during digestion, your body simply can't absorb them efficiently. They pass through your system largely unused. The bioavailability data is striking. A study in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry from 2018 measured avenjanine avronavam absorption in adults who ate oats with varying amounts of fat. Those who consumed oats alone absorbed minimal amounts. The compounds showed up in their blood at barely detectable levels. But when participants ate the same oats with just 1 tablespoon of almond butter, their blood levels of avenanthramides increased by 340% within 2 hours. This isn't just about antioxidants. The vitamin E in oats, mainly in the form of tocotriones, requires fat for absorption. These compounds protect your cells from oxidative damage, support cardiovascular health, and play roles in immune function. But without fat to create the micelles needed for absorption in your small intestine, most of that vitamin E ends up in your toilet rather than your tissues. There's a synergy here that goes beyond simple absorption. Omega-3 fatty acids work together with oat compounds to reduce inflammation more effectively than either does alone. When researchers combined oats with sources of omega-3s like ground flaxseed or chia seeds, they measured inflammatory markers like TNF-alpha and IL-6. The combination reduced these markers by 42% over 8 weeks, while oats alone reduced them by 19%, and omega-3s alone by 24%. The whole was genuinely greater than the sum of its parts. But not just any fat works optimally. You want fats that bring their own health benefits. Nuts and nut butters provide vitamin E, healthy unsaturated fats, and additional fiber. Seeds like chia, flax, and hemp deliver omega-3s and lignans. Even a small amount of coconut oil provides medium-chain triglycerides that your body can use quickly for energy. What you don't want is processed oils or hydrogenated fats that create inflammation while trying to reduce it. Here's the practical application. Add 1 to 2 tablespoons of fat to your oats. A tablespoon of almond butter stirred in while they're still warm. A tablespoon of ground flaxseed mixed with chia seeds sprinkled on top. A handful of walnuts crushed and folded in. You're adding about 100 to 150 calories, but you're multiplying the benefit of everything else in that bowl by 3 to 4 times. People worry about the extra calories from fat. But remember, these are fats that increase satiety, stabilize blood sugar, and improve the absorption of nutrients that fight inflammation and support metabolic health. You're not just adding calories, you're creating a complete nutritional package that actually works the way nature intended. Mistake 3. Ignoring timing. Your body is not the same organism at 7 a.m. that it is at 7 p.m. Your cells operate on circadian rhythms that affect everything, from hormone release to enzyme production to gene expression. When you eat matters almost as much as what you eat, and oatmeal is no exception to this rule. Let's start with the morning. When most people consume oats, your cortisol peaks naturally between 6 and 8 a.m. This is your body's wake-up signal. Cortisol raises blood sugar to give you energy to start the day. When you eat a carbohydrate-heavy meal like oatmeal during this cortisol spike, you're adding glucose on top of the glucose your liver is already releasing. For some people, particularly those with insulin resistance, this combination creates an exaggerated blood sugar spike that their body struggles to manage. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2020 measured glucose and insulin responses to identical meals eaten at different times of day. The same bowl of oatmeal eaten at 7 a.m. produced 28% higher peak blood glucose than the same bowl eaten at 11 a.m. after the cortisol surge had passed. Insulin secretion was proportionally higher as well, and insulin sensitivity was measurably lower during those early morning hours. But here's where timing gets interesting. Post-workout is actually one of the best times to eat oats, particularly if you've done resistance training or intense exercise. Your muscles are depleted of glycogen and insulin sensitivity is temporarily elevated. Your muscle cells are essentially begging for glucose to replenish what you burned. A study from the International Journal of Sports Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism in 2022 showed that carbohydrates consumed within 90 minutes post-workout replenished glycogen stores 47% more efficiently than the same carbs consumed 4 hours later. Evening consumption has different effects. Later in the day, your body's insulin sensitivity naturally decreases. You become more resistant to insulin signals. This means the same carbohydrates will produce higher blood sugar spikes. However, there's a fascinating exception. Oats contain compounds that promote melatonin production, and carbohydrates in the evening can increase serotonin, which converts to melatonin. For people who struggle with sleep, a small portion of oats 2 to 3 hours before bed might actually improve sleep quality. The key is personalizing this to your metabolic type and activity level. If you're very active and metabolically healthy, morning oats work fine, especially if you add protein and fat to blunt the glucose response. If you're insulin resistant or trying to lose weight, consider moving your oats to mid-morning or post-workout. If you exercise in the evening, that's your prime window. And if you're dealing with sleep issues, a smaller evening portion might help, though you'll want to monitor how it affects your blood sugar overnight. Track this yourself. Use a continuous glucose monitor if you can, or just pay attention to how you feel. Do you crash 2 hours after morning oats? Try them later in the day. Do you feel energized after a post-workout bowl? That's your body telling you the timing is right. Your individual biology matters more than any general rule. Mistake 2. Solo consumption. Oats eaten alone are fine. Oats combined strategically with complementary foods become something much more powerful. This is about nutrient synergy, the concept that certain combinations produce effects neither food could achieve independently. Let's talk protein first. When you eat carbohydrates alone, your blood sugar rises, insulin spikes, and within a couple hours you're hungry again. Add protein to those same carbohydrates and everything changes. Protein slows gastric emptying and stimulates the release of satiety hormones like GLP-1 and PYY. Research consistently shows that meals with adequate protein, at least 20 to 30 grams, produce significantly greater fullness and reduce calorie intake at subsequent meals. But there's more happening than just appetite control. When you combine oats with protein, particularly after exercise, you optimize muscle protein synthesis. Your muscles need a threshold amount of leucine and amino acid abundant in dairy, eggs, and certain plant proteins. to trigger the muscle tissue. A study in the International Journal of Sport Nutrition and Exercise Metabolism from 2022 found that oats combined with Greek yogurt or protein powder produce 38% greater muscle protein synthesis over 24 hours compared to oats alone, even when total protein intake was matched later in the day. Now let's talk about cinnamon. This isn't just a flavor addition. Cinnamon contains compounds that improve insulin sensitivity and glucose metabolism. Multiple studies have shown that just 1 gram of cinnamon, about half a teaspoon, can reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes by 24%. The mechanism involves polyphenols that mimic insulin and enhance insulin receptor signaling. When you add cinnamon to oats, you're essentially making your body better at handling the carbohydrates you're eating. Chia seeds bring omega-3s and additional soluble fiber that forms its own gel, multiplying the cholesterol-lowering effect of oat beta-glucan. Berries provide anthocyanins that reduce oxidative stress and inflammation. Walnuts add more omega-3s plus compounds that support brain health. These aren't random additions. Each brings specific bioactive compounds that interact with oat components to enhance overall benefit. Here's what the research shows about compound interactions. Studies measuring inflammation markers found that quercetin from berries combined with avenanthramides from oats reduced inflammatory cytokines more effectively than either compound alone. The mechanism involves different pathways. Quercetin inhibits certain inflammatory enzymes while avenanthramides suppress others. Together, they create a broader anti-inflammatory effect than either could achieve individually. Build your bowl strategically. Start with properly prepared oats. Add a high-quality protein source, Greek yogurt, protein powder, or even a couple eggs on the side. Include healthy fats from nuts or seeds. Add cinnamon for blood sugar control. Top with berries for antioxidants. You're not just making breakfast more interesting, you're creating a nutritional matrix where each component enhances the others, producing effects that isolated foods simply cannot deliver. Michael, a 55-year-old accountant with type 2 diabetes, made this shift. He went from eating instant oatmeal with brown sugar to overnight oats with Greek yogurt, cinnamon, ground flaxseed, and blueberries. His HbA1c 3-month average of blood sugar dropped from 7.2 to 5.8 in 4 months. His doctor reduced his metformin dose. The oats themselves helped, but the strategic combinations made the real difference. Mistake 1. Quality ignorance. This is the mistake that undermines everything else. You can soak your oats, use the right liquid ratio, add perfect complementary foods, and time it optimally, but if you're starting with contaminated, low-quality oats, you're building on a compromised foundation. Let's talk about what most people don't know. The Environmental Working Group tested 45 oat-based products in 2018 and found detectable levels of glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup herbicide, in 43 of them. That's 95% of samples. 31 samples, or 70%, contain levels the EWG considers harmful based on cancer risk assessments. We're not talking about trace amounts. Some samples contain glyphosate levels high enough to deliver a significant dose with a single serving. Glyphosate is an herbicide farmers spray on oats right before harvest as a desiccant. It dries out plants for easier harvesting. This practice, called desiccation, means the chemical is applied when the oats are mature and about to be harvested, leaving minimal time for breakdown. The residue makes it through processing and into your bowl. The health concerns are real and growing. The World Health Organization's Cancer Research Agency classified glyphosate as probably carcinogenic to humans in 2015. Since then, additional research has linked glyphosate exposure to gut microbiome disruption, hormonal imbalances, and immune system dysfunction. One study published in Food and Chemical Toxicology showed that glyphosate disrupts beneficial gut bacteria while allowing pathogenic species to thrive, essentially dysregulating the microbiome you're trying to support by eating oats in the first place. Beyond pesticides, there's the heavy metal issue. Oats, like other grains, can accumulate heavy metals from soil, particularly if they're grown in contaminated areas or near industrial sites. Cadmium and arsenic are the primary concerns. These metals accumulate in your tissues over time and interfere with cellular processes. Testing by Consumer Reports and other organizations has found varying levels across brands, with some significantly cleaner than others. Then there's beta-glucan content, the fiber compound responsible for most of oats' cardiovascular benefit. Not all oats are created equal. Depending on growing conditions, oat variety, and processing methods, beta-glucan content can range from as low as 3.2% to as high as 6.8% by weight. That's more than a twofold difference. If you're eating oats specifically for cholesterol reduction, starting with oats that contain twice as much beta-glucan obviously doubles your benefit. Processing facility contamination adds another layer for people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity. Oats themselves don't contain gluten, but they're often processed in facilities that also handle wheat, barley, and rye. Cross-contamination can introduce enough gluten to trigger reactions in sensitive individuals. Certified gluten-free oats are processed in dedicated facilities, eliminating this risk. So what's the solution? Buy organic oats from reputable brands that test for contaminants. Yes, they cost more, roughly $0.40 per serving versus 0.15 cents for conventional. Over a month, that's maybe $12 extra. Over a year, $144. But consider what you're avoiding: chronic exposure to probable carcinogens, heavy metals that accumulate in your organs, and gluten contamination if you're purtigal sensitive. Consider what you're gaining: higher beta-glucan content, cleaner nutrition, peace of mind. Look for brands that publish third-party testing results. Some companies voluntarily test every batch and post results on their websites. This transparency matters. If a company won't tell you what's in their product beyond the basic nutrition label, that's a red flag. And understand that steel cut or old-fashioned on the label doesn't mean clean. These terms describe processing method, not quality. You can have steel-cut oats contaminated with glyphosate and rolled oats that are pristine. Don't confuse processing style with ingredient quality. This is the foundation everything else rests on. Fix this first, then optimize preparation, because preparing contaminated oats perfectly just means you're efficiently absorbing things you don't want in your body. The complete protocol. Let me give you the exact system that addresses all 10 mistakes at once. This is what I recommend to people who want maximum benefit from minimal complexity. Sunday evening prep. Buy organic, steel-cut oats from a brand that publishes testing results. Measure 2 cups of oats into a large glass container. Add 8 cups of water, that's your 1:4 ratio. Add 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar or lemon juice. Cover and leave on your counter overnight. This handles mistakes 10, 8, 7, and 1. Monday morning, drain and rinse your soaked oats. Put them in a pot with 6 cups of fresh water. You need less because they're pre-hydrated. Cook for 15 to 18 minutes until creamy but not mushy. Let them cool completely, then portion into 5 glass containers for the work week. Refrigerate. This addresses mistakes 6 and 5. Each morning, pull out 1 container. Don't microwave it hot either. Eat it cold or warm it for just 30 seconds maximum. Add your strategic combinations: 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed, 2 tablespoons of Greek yogurt or a scoop of protein powder, a handful of berries, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a small handful of walnuts. Mix and eat. This covers mistakes 4, 3, 2, and 9. Total prep time on Sunday, 10 minutes of active work, then hands off overnight. Total time each morning, 60 seconds to add toppings. The timing depends on your schedule and metabolism, but for most people, mid-morning or post-workout works best. If you exercise early, have this afterward. If you work out in the evening, shift your oats to that post-exercise window. If you're metabolically healthy and prefer breakfast, just make sure you're adding adequate protein and fat to stabilize the glucose response. Safe considerations. Before you implement this, understand the cautions. If you have celiac disease, make absolutely certain your oats are certified gluten-free. Cross-contamination is real and can trigger serious reactions. Don't rely on naturally gluten-free claims. You need the certification. If you take medications for blood sugar control, metformin, sulfonylureas, insulin, understand that optimizing your oat consumption this way can significantly improve your blood sugar levels. That's good, but it means your medication might become too strong. Monitor your glucose closely and work with your doctor to adjust dosing. Michael had to reduce his metformin. This isn't a reason to avoid optimizing your oats. It's a reason to pay attention and communicate with your healthcare provider. For people with sensitive digestive systems, particularly those dealing with IBS, the sudden increase in fiber from properly prepared oats can cause temporary bloating and gas. Your gut bacteria need time to adjust to the increased resistant starch and beta-glucan. Start with smaller portions, maybe a quarter cup of dry oats initially, and increase gradually over 2 weeks as your microbiome adapts. If you have a history of kidney stones, particularly calcium oxalate stones, be aware that oats contain oxalates. While they're not the highest source, increasing your intake substantially means increasing oxalate consumption. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water and consider calcium supplementation, which binds oxalates in your gut and reduces absorption. Pregnant or breastfeeding women should feel comfortable eating oats prepared this way. There are no contraindications. The organic sourcing actually reduces exposure to chemicals you especially want to avoid during pregnancy. Your transformation starts now. The transformation begins with one decision and builds from there. This isn't about perfection from day one, it's about implementing research-backed changes that compound over time into meaningful health improvements. The evidence spans 8 studies we've discussed today, published between 2018 and 2023 in peer-reviewed journals. The findings are consistent. Properly prepared oats reduce inflammatory markers by up to 47%, lower LDL cholesterol by 23%, improve insulin sensitivity by 18%, and increase beneficial gut metabolites by 31%. These aren't marginal improvements. These are clinically significant changes that affect disease risk and quality of life. But the research only matters if you apply it. Tonight, you can make 3 immediate changes that address the most critical mistakes. 1. Order organic oats and commit to quality as your foundation. 2. Set aside 15 minutes this week to prep a batch properly soaked overnight, cooked with adequate water, portioned in glass. 3. Add protein, healthy fat, and cinnamon to your next bowl. These 3 changes alone will transform your results. Over the next 2 to 4 weeks, pay attention to how your body responds. Notice your energy levels mid-morning. Are you stable or crash? Check your hunger patterns. Are you satisfied till lunch or snacking at 10 a.m.? If you have access to lab testing, measure your cholesterol and inflammatory markers before and after implementing this protocol. The numbers will likely surprise you. This is peer-reviewed science translated into practical action. You're not guessing or hoping. You're applying documented biochemical mechanisms to achieve predictable physiological outcomes. Take that one serving, prepared with intention and knowledge, and give your body the tools it actually needs to heal and thrive. The choice is yours. The research is clear. The benefits are documented. Start tonight.